Champaign County Agriculture Today with your host, Dennis Riggs.
Welcome to Champaign County Agriculture Today. My name is Dennis Riggs, your host for the next half hour, as we talk about that important industry here in the East Central Illinois area, and that is agriculture. When we think about agriculture, we think about those guys out there working on the farm. They're driving the tractors and they're digging ditches and taking care of the livestock. And we sometimes forget about maybe one of the most important aspects of agriculture, and that's the ladies in agriculture. And I'm very honored today that on this program we're going to find out more about what the ladies in agriculture do here in East Central Illinois. And we have with us today Marguerite Zahn. Good to have you with us today, Marguerite.
Nice to be here.
And we have Amy Rademacher with us today too. We appreciate both of you taking your time out and coming to talk to us on the program today. Marguerite, I'm going to start out with you. Farm girl, grew up on the farm. Give me your background. Where did you go to school, educational things, and where have you learned about farming?
Well, I'm the daughter of Marion and Gertrude Henry of Sadorce, Illinois, and I grew up there, went to Unity High School, graduated, went to beauty school, and got my degree with that. And then I married Larry Zond of Champaign, rural Champaign, and I had two sons, Harold, he's now 31, and Andy, 26.
Very good.
And Larry was a mechanic, auto mechanic, and in 1988 he was offered to go into business with the family, and so he mechanic and farmed, and I still did hair at that time at home. And so then in 2002 Larry bought his brother out, and that's when I started taking an active role. But I grew up with livestock and grain, so I knew what he was getting into.
Well, they sometimes talk about the school of hard knocks. Would you say that when you grow up on a farming operation, is that how you learn a lot about the operation?
Oh yes, because I didn't go out, with the corn picker or the combines and planters, but I helped take care of the livestock. And so it was baling the hay, baling the straw after the wheat was cut, putting it up in the barn. I was up in the barn handling those bales and grinding the feed, and also showed cattle in 4-H, and we went to around 8 fairs in the summer. So it was a very busy summer for us girls.
What are you part of the operation today? What's your job responsibilities today?
Well, my job description today is everything.
That'll work.
Yeah. In the spring, I'm not as busy as I am in the fall. But in the spring, when it comes to planting, I'm running. Go get the seed, bring the seed to us, help us switch fields. Then when we switch landlords, then I drive the bean drill with the tractor, and Larry is on the back scooping the beans down so that we don't open up another bag and pour it in there and then you've got leftovers. So I know how to do that, and so my job description in the spring's a little easier. That I take them hot meals and that type of thing. But then in the fall is when I leave home when they leave home, and I don't come home until they come home. So I run the combine if needed. I run the tractor and auger wagon, and I could run one of the trucks, the 10-wheeler, and then I fill the bins.
There you go. Well, I believe your earlier description of everything has now been justified. That'll work. That's good. Amy, what about yourself? Give me your background. Where's hometown for you, and where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Moequa, Illinois, just south of Decatur, on a cattle and grain farm, corn, soybeans mostly, and Black Angus cattle. And that farm's still there today, ran by my father, but both my grandfathers were in agriculture, so it's a long line of agriculture, obviously. Went to the University of Illinois here in Urbana-Champaign and got my degree in ag finance. However, I took a different career path, and I am the farm safety specialist at Carle Foundation Hospital here. So I've been doing that nearly 7 years, advocating safety in agriculture.
Now, I know you learn a lot about farming when you grow up on the farm. Did growing up on the farm in your situation help you in the job that you are today as a farm safety specialist?
Oh, sure. Well, first, I always say that helps you relate, because just going out to the farm, as a medical professional, I wouldn't blend in as well as I do as a farm girl. And I'm now with my husband in rural Rantoul on his farm where he grew up. And just that experience and being able to communicate with farmers helps. But then a lot of what I preach about safety comes from my own experience. Luckily I was pretty fortunate not to sustain any injuries, but a lot of firsthand experience, sure.
Tell me about your job there with Carl. I know that you talk to farmers and non-farmers alike. What is the main part of your job responsibilities, and who are you trying to get out to?
Well, I have a variety of audiences. I speak to a lot of children about their safety on the farm and just in the community. I speak to farmers on their experience and what I call first on the scene. You know, if you find a fellow farmer or if you find a family member, how do you respond to those scenes? And then I also work with EMTs and firefighters related to specific ag traumas and different types of things they might run into and how they respond to farm emergencies. So I have a variety of audiences doing different things at different times of the year, and I also have first aid and CPR classes that we do out in the rural communities.
Many times we think of agriculture as being a tranquil and serene and very safe. You're out there among Mother Nature and taking it easy. I understand, Amy, that maybe there's another side to that too. Do you have any numbers or any cautions as far as the rough part about farming?
Well, the main takeaway from it is agriculture still remains the #1 most dangerous occupation in the United States. And we kill, that sounds bad, but we kill more workers than any other workplace per 100,000 workers is what they look at. So statistically, it's still very dangerous. OSHA, it's not regulated. The farm isn't unless you have so many employees. And so it's a lot different business than your typical industry.
Marguerite, you're out there every day, involved in a lot of things. Is Amy, she got the right story here? Is it dangerous out there?
Oh yes, oh yes. I catch myself several times just tripping over a corn stalk that's already been cut.
Yeah.
Bean stubbles, just the moisture that's on your feet. You go to climb up a ladder on the combine or on the tractor. I mean, it's, there's hazards everywhere you look. We live at the farmstead that Larry spent most of his childhood, and we have grain bin site there, and we have a rental house on the farmstead. And one little boy, that lives there, he always gets off the bus and runs straight out to where I'm at, usually standing at the back of the truck, watching the grain go in the auger, and he has been told over and over, the safety. You've got to stay back here. This is very dangerous. It's important.
So you have to manage that. You have
Yeah.
to take control in that situation.
Yes. And, I don't want to be harsh, but, I know that he's inquisitive, at the age. He's now 6th grader. And it scares me to death with him coming over there because it's some action, it's going on. So, even when I move the trucks out of the way, I'm like, Jonathan, you need to stand right here because I won't be able to see you. And, he obeys me. He understands what I'm trying to tell him. But the guys out on the farm working with the equipment and everything, my younger son, he works for us full time, and I said, Andy, watch what you're doing. I know, Mom. And I said, but I'm the one to remind you, because it is life-threatening, and I have had 2 people have lost their lives in my family. That I think one of them was the start of Carl with the farm safety that Amy is with, and then the son died with a farm accident. So, it's right there next to my family.
Well, it's a tough occupation, and it's awful hard, and sometimes it's hard to let people know how dangerous it is when they're not out there every day. We'll tell you what, we're going to take a little break right now, but when we come back, we're going to find out about some of the specific risks that farmers face out there in the field, and if there's any difference between the men and the women in agriculture. We'll be right back.
According to the USDA, while the total number of farmers in the U.S. has been decreasing, the number of women farmers has been increasing. In 1978, women operated 5.2% of farms. Today, women make up 27.2% of farmers.
Welcome back. Here on our program today, we're talking about with two ladies in agriculture and about the specific risks and differences between men and women in agriculture. I'm going to come back and talk to Amy here. In agriculture, the risks are there every day. Is there a difference between the women and the men in agriculture as far as the risk factor?
Well, I still say probably most of production agriculture is still driven a lot by men. So obviously if they're spending more time with the equipment, they're going to be more susceptible to the risks from a safety standpoint and health risks. But I would say that the women have a different role. You see a lot more women that remain in the livestock segment still. Maybe they're not driving the tractors, but they're out moving grain and taking care of that. So it's a different type of risk. Because of the environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Marguerite, it's a risky business out there, but today we're talking about the fun part of agriculture, that it is a good thing. What rewards do you get being a lady involved in agriculture?
Well, I'm working side by side, Larry, and I'm doing things that he needs done that it would take him away from what I can't do. So I try to help him, like I do all the record keeping. I pay the majority of the bills, so I know what's coming in and going out. And then as far as, helping them, I'm out there filling the vehicles up with fuel. I'm helping hand them tools if they are up on top of the combine doing some repairs. So it's a partnership. It's a total partnership. And yes, we probably get into a lot of disagreements but everybody does in every walk of life, and you just learn to walk away and address it a different way and try to come to a conclusion that everybody agrees. But we get along. Andy, he tolerates Larry and I both. And that takes a lot to do that because he's 26 and of course he's got the world by the tail, and he knows what needs to be done too.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. There you're talking about the new generation, your generation. You talked about your parents, maybe goes back to your grandparents on the farm as well.
Yes.
What do you think has changed, say, 2 generations ago when your grandmother was out there farming? Is it different now than it was back then?
Well, my grandmother, I really don't think that she was really out there hands-on. I think mostly she was the farmer's wife and did the household duties. I know she took hot meals to the fields. I do know that and remember that. My mother, what she did, I remember her bringing the corn in and we would put it up in the crib. And she did that type of transportation. She'd bring in the hay racks and the straw racks and that type of thing. But mostly the garden work, she had the hot meals on the table and out in the field. And like I said, my younger sister and I, we basically took care of the livestock. That's what I remember as a teenager.
I've got to ask this question. We always talk about agriculture and try to present it in a true light. What's the worst job on the farm? What job don't you like to do?
Well, I don't like emptying the trucks because of all the bees' wings. And
bees? Are there bees? Are there bees in the grain?
Well, I used to call it corn shaft, and then I got corrected.
Well, what is the stuff? What is a bee's wing?
Bees' wings are the little teeny weeny red shaft. It's like a little paper type of thing that comes out of the cob when the corn is shelled. And when you're dumping a truck at the elevator or at your grain bin site, the air gets in between the corn kernels and this little red shaft just blows all over the place. And so when you go in after doing this all day, your floor is just covered with this little red stuff. So that's bees' wings.
And that's the bad part of farming.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Well, Amy, from bees' wings to dumping trucks, we're hearing different technologies here. What are some of the occupational hazards that farmers run across on a day-to-day basis? And has it changed over the years?
I think it's interesting because I remember back to my grandmother and her involvement in the farm and one of my grandmothers backing into their car at the time. But, that was their activity, was maybe driving the trucks. I remember both my grandmothers involved in that, but you definitely had hot meals. Today, my mom is hopping from one truck to the next, and she grabs a sandwich whenever she can for everyone, and it's cold. That's just the way things are. But the number one problem that we see nationwide and in the state of Illinois is tractor safety and tractor overturns, and that's no big surprise because what percentage of your time is spent on a tractor? Quite a bit. So that obviously remains to be a risk, regardless of if you're male or female. Tractor overturns. That one actually is more driven by age. I'd say probably the younger people and the older people end up being more in those tractor overturns because they get the jobs of mowing the roadsides and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But
What about technology? Has technology made a difference in farm safety, either good news or bad news?
technology has, but we don't a lot of times take advantage of it the way we should. You know, SMV emblems, lighting, is everything working? Is everything clean? A rollover protection structure is great, but do we have it up? Do we have a seatbelt on? Are we wearing helmets when we're riding ATVs? There's a lot of precautions that have been made, shielding and so forth, but we got to take advantage of that.
How about the cell phone? Has it changed anything about agriculture?
Oh, yeah. I definitely, whether it's safety or anything, my dad will be out in the combine calling people and getting things done. I think it expedites, obviously, any aspect, getting fertilizer to you or whatever needs to happen. But I'm always a little leery about the safety of that, too, when you're driving a combine through the field and on the cell phone. So.
Marguerite's laughing over here. I think she's got a story. Is there a story about cell phones in agriculture you can share with us?
Well, I'm running the auger wagon and next to Larry with the combine, and he's doing one of these numbers, you know, driving and talking, and I don't know how I can do it because I run the combine too. And, you know, I'm just sitting there driving along, shaking my head. You know, I think at that time, if it's a personal call, he needs to say, I'm a little busy and hang up. But anyway, you know, I don't know how he can operate it because when I drive the combine, one hand's always on the joystick, which is your speed, your throttle control, plus that you can stop that combine, you know, pretty fast if something's happening in front of you. And when you're driving the combine, you're constantly looking down. And, you know, we do have a problem with farming next to some subdivision areas that people have thrown things out in our field to dispose of them. And those don't go through the combine. And that causes lots of damage if it does, even if it's a rock. So you've got to keep your eyes on those rows in front of your head. And when he's on the phone, and I don't know how he's concentrating on everything at one time.
Well, we hope maybe he's getting better at that as he goes along.
Maybe.
Tell me about how fast that combine goes. What kind of speed you go through the field? You know, is it 20 mile an hour? Is it 2 mile an hour or somewhere in between?
You're asking what speed I go.
Right.
Okay, well, that's different than what Larry goes.
Okay.
I go anywhere between 4.2 to 4.6 is my comfort zone.
And you're talking 4.2 miles per hour.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so when they come up next to you with the auger wagon, they're supposed to go my speed instead of my going their speed. Because if you've got down corn or the wind has come along as it was maturing and blown it to one side, you've got to feed that in there just right or it knocks the ear clear off of the stalk. Also, another factor is if the corn is very dry, it'll shatter once it hits part of your combine head. So, you know, there's a lot of different factors that motivates me in my window of speed that I go. But the one year I probably harvested 75% of our corn. You know, Larry was driving one of the trucks at that time with Andy, and we didn't have an auger wagon. So I did the combine driving.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're involved in a whole lot of the operation. And tell you what, we're going to take a short little break now. But when we come back, we're going to find out about what other ladies are doing in agriculture and what these ladies are doing in addition to their current jobs, other things that keep them involved in agriculture. We'll be right back.
According to the USDA, in 1982, the average age of the woman farmer began to decrease. In 1997, more than 40% were under the age of 55.
Welcome back to Champaign County Agriculture Today, where we're talking with the ladies in agriculture, finding out from their perspective what makes agriculture a little bit different industry. Amy, in agriculture, we've been hearing about all the different varieties of jobs. Would you say that there's jobs that women are better at or not as good at, or is that a can of worms right there?
I personally think they can do any job
That a girl,
on,
okay.
on any side, and vice versa. I think probably not. I don't know how many years ago you would say, but you saw a lot more in the home extension and more of the food and nutrition, the horticulture and those types of things. But I actually made a call today. I was curious to see what percentage of the College of ACES, or Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences here, are women versus men. And in undergraduate, they told me in '07, because they didn't have the '08 data, but 56% of the undergrads are female. Or were in '07, and I think it'll probably be about the same percent this year. So more and more women getting into agriculture, and again, now you've got them in ag finance, you've got them in crop sciences, animal sciences. They're across the board. So.
What about production agriculture? I know that's, and as Marguerite, she's involved in a lot of production agriculture side. You see girls that decide, I want to run the tractor, I want to be the farmer out there. Is there a percentage that likes that?
There are a few, but even I was in a college sorority, professional women in agriculture, and there were a few that wanted to go back and do that, but have still gone into other careers. And I think, you see that across the board, though, whether male or female, they go home with that intent, and then maybe they find a job in town that's a little bit better, and they can do this on the side. Mm-hmm. So I think you see that across the board, and I have no doubt that they can. It's a matter of whether they go ahead and pursue that.
Marguerite, agriculture is a lot of times thought as an industry where you're out by yourself, not a lot of social interaction. Do you have things you do socially? Tell me about the other part of agriculture other than just the work side. What keeps you busy off the farm?
Well, I'm a member of the Champaign County Farm Bureau Women's Committee, and we're very, very active promoting ag in the community, in the county. And then I go to the marketing meetings that the Farm Bureau has, and I also have gone to a lot of the legislative meetings that the Farm Bureau does. And I went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied with 30-some Illinois Farm Bureau members, and that was in '07, March of '07. And so I try to keep up on the issues that ag has, and I try to write and communicate with legislators and representatives. We hosted Naomi out on the farm. Naomi Jacobson.
Oh, the
yes.
Local state representative.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, we had her out on the farm. This was maybe 3 years ago. She was there during harvest, so she got to ride the combine and carry on. So I keep very, very busy with the Farm Bureau Women's Committee.
Do you find out that isolation is a problem? I mean, a lot of your work is done out in the middle of a field, if you will. Is that a problem or is that a benefit?
Oh, I don't mind it. Mm-hmm. I grew up out in the country, and I don't mind being by ourselves out there. But, there's always somebody stopping by, it seems like, because we live in southwest Champaign, and Larry's actually had people pull over and get out and ride the combine with him because they just have never experienced anything like that.
That's an interesting question. I'm going to ask you, Amy. People that do not farm, that stop by to check out farming, wander the fields, whatever, is that a danger?
Oh, of course it is. So there's a lot of blind spots and things that the general public doesn't realize of where a farmer can and can't see. And while that tractor may not, or the combine may not be going fast, I can tell from personal experience just in the last couple years, I about got too close to a combine because Dad didn't realize I was there. So there's a lot of hazards with doing that. I know we always promote letting people know about agriculture, and we want people to know about agriculture, but there's a lot of risks, and that seat that sits there in the combine is really not a buddy seat, it's an instructional seat, so we've got to be careful with that.
What about daytime versus nighttime? I can imagine the risks inherently go higher at nighttime. Is that true?
Nighttime, one, because it's darker, but also because they've been going for a long time. I mean, their day doesn't start at 8 or 9 a.m. It might start at 4 or 5 a.m. And if they're going at 9 or 10 at night, which isn't uncommon, and some even run 24/7. I mean, it becomes more dangerous because they're more tired, and reaction time goes down. So.
Marguerite, what about the motivational factor? Who tells you when a job is supposed to be done? Who tells you the day to plant and the day to harvest? Who makes that decision?
Well, not our weatherman. It's Mother Nature. Someone else is in control of that. So, we have to plan around what the weather puts us, what situation the weather puts us in, because you have to wait for your crops to dry to harvest. You need drying days, and right now we just pray that we don't have an early frost, because our crops were planted so late, because that is just going to make things really bad. Really bad.
So what you're telling me, there is no book, there is no place to look it up.
No.
It is a true decision made in the field, if you will.
Yes, yes, at the breakfast table.
Very good. Amy, how about your home farming operation? How's things going back there? Do you think what's the goal and what's the future for you?
I don't know. Every day is kind of a new day of asking that. I just actually called Dad this morning to say, have you gotten in? And he told me that corn was 22%. On my blackberry, I every afternoon get the markets. So I'm still active and still curious as to what's going on with that. But who knows? Who knows whether I'll end up back there farming? I'm one of 3 girls, and I would be it probably to go back. So who knows? But there's a lot of tradition there.
Do you think that there's a future for women in agriculture, and if so, or if not, why?
Oh, definitely. I mean, just again, with the numbers of women going into agriculture, the number of careers. I mean, I think we used to think of the sows, cows, and plows, and it's so much different now. We consider agriculture to be everything with our horticulture, food science, a lot of people doing research, a lot of women doing research with animals. There's definitely a career. It just may not be the cows, sows, and plows.
Marguerite, you started out early in agriculture and you're still there. What about it? If somebody watching the program today, a lady there, and she thinks, gosh, I wouldn't mind getting into farming, is that a good idea, or would you advise her against that?
Well, it's long hours. It's it's a lot of financial, instability and then stability. It's a lot of planning and knowing where your inputs, which are your seed, fertilizer, chemicals, what that cost is. You've got to learn so much, and I don't know all of it. I'm just a hired gun, basically. I don't know. I don't know what it's terribly expensive right now to get into farming. Just terribly expensive.
I think you're also telling me that it's not an easy job, but somebody's got to do it, right?
That's right.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for your insight into agriculture today. Continued luck in your operation, and Amy, in your career field. I hope things go well for you. And we'd like to thank everybody out there for listening today. I hope you learned more about what women in agriculture actually do, and the fact that it's not just a man's world out there, that it's actually women and men working in partnership to make agriculture a great industry. Until next time, I'm Dennis Riggs. Thanks for listening.
Champaign County Agriculture Today is brought to you by Champaign County Farm Bureau.